Dear listeners, we're back with a new story. Get ready for cheating, revenge, and wild relationship drama. The soft glow of candlelight flickered across the table, casting a warm halo around Clara and Daniel as they sat in a quaint bistro tucked away on a cobblestone street in Paris. The intoxicating scent of garlic and herbs wafted through the air, mingling with the laughter of other diners. Clara couldn't help but smile at Daniel, his dark hair tousled just right and his eyes sparkling with mischief. "Can you believe we're actually here?" Clara said, swirling her glass of red wine. "In the city of love?" Daniel leaned closer, his voice low, teasing. "Oh, I can think of a few things I'd rather do in the city of love than just dine." Clara felt her cheeks warm at his suggestive tone. The thrill of his flirtation sent a jolt of excitement through her, momentarily overshadowing the gnawing guilt that had settled in her stomach. She bit her lip, her heart racing. This was supposed to be an escape, a chance to live without the constraints of her life with James. "Daniel, please," she said, trying to keep her voice light. "We can't go there. Not tonight." "Why not? It's just us in this beautiful city." "Just admit you want to," he replied, his eyes glinting with playful challenge. Clara chuckled, but the laughter felt hollow. "You know I want to, but what about James?" she said, her voice barely above a whisper. The weight of his name hung between them like a thick fog. Daniel shrugged, his expression shifting slightly, becoming more serious. "James isn't here, Clara. It's just us. You can't tell me you haven't felt trapped in that perfect life of yours. I see the restlessness in you." Clara looked away, staring at the busy street outside, where couples strolled hand in hand, blissfully unaware of her turmoil. She couldn't shake the feeling that she was living a double life, balancing on the edge of a precipice. The glamour of her affair with Daniel felt exhilarating but also terrifying. "It's not that simple," she said softly, trying to steady her nerves. "Why not?" Daniel pressed. "You deserve to feel alive. Don't you want that?" "Yes, I do," she admitted, her voice shaky. "But at what cost?" Just then, her phone buzzed on the table, interrupting the moment. Clara's heart sank as she saw James's name flash across the screen. She hesitated, her fingers hovering over the screen. "Everything okay?" Daniel asked, his playful demeanor fading as he noticed her expression. Clara forced a smile, trying to push the nagging doubt aside. "It's probably just work," she lied, quickly silencing her phone. But deep down, she felt a wave of anxiety crash over her, sensing that the balance she'd maintained for so long was beginning to crumble. "Clara," Daniel said, leaning in closer. "You're tense. Just breathe. We're in Paris. You're with me. Let's enjoy this moment." His words were meant to soothe her, but instead, they only heightened her inner turmoil. Clara felt her chest tighten, torn between the thrill of the evening and the heaviness of her deception. "Right," she said, trying to shake off her worries. "Let's just enjoy dinner." But as the meal continued, her laughter felt forced, the clinking of wine glasses echoed hollowly in her ears, and the vibrant colors of the restaurant began to blur. Clara couldn't escape the feeling that everything she was doing was wrong. The contrast between her glamorous evening and the life she had built with James became sharper with every passing moment. As they shared a decadent dessert, Daniel's playful banter continued. "You know, I've been thinking about our next adventure. What if we take a spontaneous trip somewhere? Just you and me, no strings attached." Clara's heart raced at the thought, but her mind drifted back to James. "I can't just abandon everything," she said, the weight of her words heavy with regret. Daniel's expression shifted, a hint of frustration seeping through. "I get it, Clara. You're caught in a web of your own making, but you have to ask yourself, is it worth it to live a life of pretense?" Before she could respond, her phone buzzed again, and this time, she felt a pit of dread in her stomach. Clara glanced down and froze as the texts from James began to flood in, each one a harsh reminder of her double life. "Clara, I know what you've been doing. I can't believe you'd betray me like this. Don't bother coming home. I'm done." The panic surged through her, drowning out the sounds of laughter and clinking glasses around her. "Clara? Are you okay?" Daniel asked, concern etched on his face. "No, she struggled to find her words, her heart racing. "I need to go. I have to leave." Before he could respond, Clara stood up, the chair scraping against the floor echoing her desperation. She felt Daniel's eyes on her, a mix of confusion and worry, but she didn't stop to explain. All she could think about was the impending collapse of her carefully constructed world. As she fled the bistro, the night air hit her like a slap, the coolness biting at her skin. The excitement of the evening faded into the darkness as she rushed through the streets of Paris, grappling with the reality of her choices and the impending storm that awaited her back home. The cobblestone streets of Paris glistened under the street lamps as Clara hurried away from the bistro, her heart pounding in her chest. She felt the weight of the city around her, its beauty mocking her pain. The thrill of her evening with Daniel had evaporated, replaced by a gnawing sense of dread as she processed the implications of James's texts. Clara found herself in a quiet alley, the distant sounds of laughter and clinking glasses fading behind her. She leaned against a cool stone wall, trying to catch her breath. Her mind raced, replaying the texts like a bad movie on loop. "I can't believe you'd betray me like this. I'm done. Damn it," she muttered to herself, clutching her phone as if it were a lifeline. She had been living in a fantasy, one where she could have it all, Daniel's excitement and James's stability. But now that fantasy was shattering like glass. Just as she was about to collect herself, her phone buzzed again. It was another message from James. She hesitated, knowing she should read it but dreading what it might say. "Clara, please respond. We need to talk." Her hands trembled as she typed back, "I can't right now. I'm not ready." The response came almost immediately. "You're not ready? You've been lying to me. How can we move forward if you won't even face this?" Clara felt a surge of anger mixed with guilt. How could he demand honesty from her when she had been living a lie? She tried to steady her breathing, the city's chaos swirling around her. Just then, Daniel's voice broke through her thoughts. "Clara," he called, hurrying down the alley towards her, his brow furrowed with concern. "I was worried. I thought you left without saying goodbye." She looked up at him, the warmth of his presence temporarily soothing the storm inside her. I couldn't stay. I got a message from James," she admitted, her voice barely above a whisper. Daniel's expression shifted, a mix of understanding and frustration. "What did he say?" "He knows about the affair," she replied, her voice trembling. "He said he's done." "I don't know what to do, Daniel." He stepped closer, his voice softening. "You know you can't keep living this way. You have to make a choice, Clara. Either you confront James and deal with the fallout or continue running from it. But I can't be the other man forever." Clara felt a pang of guilt wash over her. "I didn't mean for it to get this far," she said, tears stinging her eyes. "I just wanted to feel alive again." "Then be alive," he urged, reaching for her hand. "Face your life. Don't let this moment slip away just because it feels uncomfortable." For a moment, Clara considered his words, the truth echoing within her. But the thought of facing James, of admitting her betrayal, felt like standing at the edge of a cliff. "What if he hates me?" she asked, her voice breaking. Daniel squeezed her hand gently, searching her eyes. "He may hate you, but you owe it to yourself, and to him, to be honest. It's the only way to move forward, whatever that looks like." As they stood in the dim light of the alley, Clara's heart raced with fear and determination. She could feel the weight of her choices pressing down on her. "I need to go back," she finally said, swallowing hard. "I have to face him." "Are you sure?" Daniel asked, his eyes searching hers for certainty. "Yes," Clara said, her voice steadier than before. "I can't keep pretending everything is fine." "Then I'll walk you back," he offered, concern lacing his tone. "You don't have to do this alone." "No," Clara replied, shaking her head. "I need to do this by myself. This is my mess." "Okay," Daniel said, his gaze softening. But remember, I'm here if you need me. Thank you, she said, the words heavy with unspoken emotions. As they stood together for a moment longer, Clara felt a flicker of hope. Maybe facing the truth would lead to some form of resolution, no matter how painful. With a deep breath, she turned to leave the alley, determination pulsing through her veins. The streets of Paris seemed to pulse with life around her, but she felt a profound solitude as she made her way back to the apartment she had once felt safe in. Each step felt monumental, a push against the tide of her indecision. Clara clutched her phone tightly, knowing she had to confront James and the reality she had been avoiding for too long. As she approached their building, a storm brewed within her. Clara knew she was at a tipping point, there would be no going back once she entered their home. She stood outside their door, her heart pounding like a drum, fighting the urge to flee. Taking one last deep breath, she knocked, her resolve steeling as she prepared to face the consequences of her actions. The sound echoed in the stillness, a reminder that everything was about to change. Clara stood outside her apartment door, her heart racing as she waited for James to answer. Each second felt like an eternity, and with every tick of the clock, the anxiety built inside her like a pressure cooker. She could hear her heartbeat pounding in her ears, drowning out the sounds of the bustling city outside. Finally, the door creaked open, and there stood James, his expression a mixture of disbelief and anger. His eyes narrowed as he took in Clara's disheveled appearance, the shadows beneath her eyes betraying her inner turmoil. "Clara," he said, his voice cold and sharp. "You actually came back." "James, we need to talk," she replied, her voice trembling as she stepped inside, the familiar scent of their home washing over her, a scent now laced with betrayal. "Talk," he repeated incredulously, closing the door behind her. "What could we possibly have to discuss? You've already made your choice." Clara swallowed hard, her throat dry. "I know I've hurt you. I didn't want this to happen," she said, her voice cracking under the weight of her guilt. I was confused. I never meant to hurt you." "Confused?" James's voice rose, his anger boiling over. "You think that justifies lying to me? Sneaking around? I trusted you, Clara." She flinched at the accusation, the sting of his words hitting her like a physical blow. "I know, and I'm so sorry. I never wanted to betray you. Daniel he made me feel things I haven't felt in a long time." "Is that it?" he snapped, pacing the small living room. "You felt a thrill, so you threw away everything we built together. The life we created." Clara felt the tears welling in her eyes. "I thought I could have both. I thought I could keep you and still feel alive with him. But I was wrong." "Damn right you were wrong," James said, running a hand through his hair in frustration. "What do you expect me to do now? Just forgive you? Pretend this didn't happen?" "No," she exclaimed, her voice rising in desperation. "I'm not asking for forgiveness. I just wanted to explain. I wanted you to know how I got here." James stopped pacing and turned to her, his expression softening slightly. "Explain? What is there to explain? You've already destroyed my trust." Clara took a deep breath, trying to steady herself. "I felt trapped, James. Our life, while perfect on the outside, felt suffocating. I thought I could find a way to reclaim my happiness without losing you. But I see now how naive that was." James's eyes narrowed, searching her face for sincerity. "And you think this is just going to fix itself? That you can waltz back in and act like nothing's changed?" "I don't know," she admitted, her voice trembling. "I'm scared, James. I don't want to lose you, but I can't pretend this didn't happen either. I'm willing to do whatever it takes to make things right." "You want to make things right?" he challenged, his tone hard. "Then you should have thought about that before you decided to sleep with someone else." Clara winced, feeling the truth of his words pierce her heart. "I know I messed up. I can't change the past, but I can work to earn your trust back, if you'll let me." James crossed his arms, his expression skeptical. "And what does that look like? You think a few apologies are going to fix this?" "I'm willing to go to counseling, to talk about everything. To lay it all out on the table, Clara said, her voice gaining strength. I want to be honest with you about my feelings, my fears. I want to rebuild our relationship, if you're open to it. James looked at her, his eyes searching. The anger began to ebb away, replaced by a profound sadness. I don't know if I can go back to how things were. It feels like you've already made your choice. Clara felt the desperation rise in her chest, choking her. I haven't made a choice, James. I was living in a fantasy, thinking I could have it all without consequences. But I see now that I was wrong. You mean everything to me. For a moment, silence hung in the air between them, heavy with unspoken words. Clara could see the conflict in his eyes, the love battling against the pain she had caused. Why should I believe you? He asked, his voice barely above a whisper. How do I know you won't just go back to him the moment things get tough? Clara stepped closer, feeling the gravity of the moment. Because I realized something tonight. I don't want to lose you. I'm not in love with Daniel, I'm in love with the idea of freedom he represented. But freedom doesn't mean abandoning the life we built together. James's gaze softened slightly, but the hurt was still etched into his features. You've shattered my trust, Clara. It's not something that can just be fixed with words. I know, she said, tears streaming down her face. But I'm willing to fight for us, to prove that I can be the partner you deserve. Just please, give me a chance. James looked away, the conflict clear in his expression. I don't know if I can do that. This hurts too much. I understand, Clara said, her voice trembling. But I'm asking you to consider it. I don't want to live in this pain anymore, and I don't think you do either. As Clara stood there, the weight of the moment pressed down on her, but she felt a flicker of hope. Maybe this wasn't the end after all. Maybe it was just the beginning of a long and difficult journey toward redemption. Let's take some time to think, James finally said, his voice hoarse. I need to process this. Okay, Clara replied, her heart sinking but understanding. I'll give you space. Just know I'm here whenever you're ready to talk. As she turned to leave the living room, the reality of her choices hit her with full force. She felt lost in a whirlwind of emotions, each step feeling heavier than the last. The door closed behind her, the finality of it resonating in the silence of the room. Clara leaned against the wall, tears streaming down her face, feeling the weight of her decisions crash down around her. The thrill of her affair had faded, leaving her with nothing but regret and the stark reality that her life had irrevocably changed. She had a long road ahead, but for the first time, she was determined to confront her past and fight for her future, whatever that may hold. The morning light filtered through the curtains, illuminating Clara's room with a soft glow. She had hardly slept, her mind racing with thoughts of the night before. The weight of her decisions hung heavily on her shoulders as she replayed every word exchanged with James. Could she really face the truth of what she had done? Sitting up in bed, Clara glanced at her phone, half expecting another message from James, but there was nothing. The silence was deafening. She felt a wave of nausea wash over her as she thought about the confrontation ahead. It was time to face the music. Clara dressed in a simple blouse and jeans, trying to quell the anxious flutter in her stomach. As she descended the stairs of their apartment, she felt as if she were walking toward a judgment day. The smell of coffee filled the air, but it did little to comfort her. She found James in the kitchen, standing by the coffee machine, his back turned to her. He seemed lost in thought. "Good morning," she said softly, her voice barely above a whisper. James turned slowly, his expression unreadable. "Morning," he replied flatly, his tone devoid of warmth. Clara felt a chill run down her spine at the distance in his voice. She took a deep breath, steeling herself. "I was hoping we could talk." "About what?" he asked, crossing his arms defensively. "About how you betrayed me. About how you chose another man over our marriage." "James, please," she implored, stepping closer. "I know I messed up. I'm not trying to excuse my actions. I just want to understand what we can do from here." "From here?" he echoed, incredulity etched on his face. What can we do? You've already made it clear where your priorities lie. Clara's heart sank at his words. I was confused, lost in my own feelings. I never meant for it to go this far, she said, her voice trembling. Daniel was an escape, not a replacement for you. James's eyes narrowed, the hurt evident in his gaze. An escape? You think that's what this was? You think betraying me was just a moment of weakness? No, Clara admitted, tears pooling in her eyes. It was a desperate attempt to feel something again. But I realize now how reckless that was. James sighed, rubbing his temples as if trying to ward off a headache. I don't know if I can trust you anymore, Clara. You've shattered that trust. I understand, she replied, her heart aching at the truth of his words. But I want to rebuild it. I want to be honest with you about everything. He turned away, pouring himself a cup of coffee, his movements tense. What's there to be honest about? The fact that you found someone else to fill a void. Clara felt the sting of his words, but she pressed on. I need you to know that it wasn't about Daniel. It was about me. I felt trapped in our life, and I let my insecurities take over. James set the coffee down on the counter, his hands gripping the edge tightly. You've made it all about you, Clara. What about me? What about how this affects my life? I know, she said, her voice breaking. But I want to understand how we got to this point. I want to hear your feelings, your fears. Can we talk about what led me to make such a terrible choice? He paused, his shoulders relaxing slightly as he considered her words. I don't even know where to start. I thought we had a good life. We had plans, dreams. We did, Clara said, stepping closer. But I was feeling suffocated, and I didn't communicate that to you. I thought I could handle it alone, but instead, I ended up hurting you. Did you ever think about how I might feel? James asked, his voice low. You were so consumed with your own desires that you didn't consider the impact of your choices on me. I know. I was selfish, she said, tears spilling down her cheeks. I should have talked to you, but I was scared of what you'd say. I was scared of losing you. James looked at her, the hurt in his eyes mixed with a flicker of empathy. And now you've lost me in a different way. You've lost my trust. I'm willing to work on it, James, Clara pleaded, her heart racing. I'll do whatever it takes to prove that I can be the partner you deserve. I just need a chance to show you. He sighed deeply, his frustration evident. You think it's that easy? You think just saying the right things will fix this? No, but I want to try, Clara insisted. I know I can't undo what I did, but I can change moving forward. I can be better. James's expression softened momentarily, but the hurt remained. What if I can't forgive you? What if I can't look at you the same way again? Clara stepped closer, desperation filling her voice. Then let's work on that together. I don't want to lose you, James. You're my partner, my best friend. I don't want this to be the end of us. The silence that followed hung thick in the air, punctuated only by the distant sounds of the city waking up outside. James finally looked at her, his eyes reflecting a mixture of pain and uncertainty. I need time, Clara. I can't just turn off my feelings like a switch. I understand, she replied, her voice barely above a whisper. I just hope you'll consider my feelings, too. I want to understand how we can move forward. I need to think, he said, his tone resigned. But right now, I don't know what that looks like. Clara nodded, feeling the heaviness of the moment settle over them. Okay. I'll give you space, but I hope we can talk again soon. I'm willing to fight for us, James. As she turned to leave the kitchen, Clara felt a mix of hope and despair. The conversation had opened a door, but the future remained uncertain. She knew it would take time, effort, and an immense amount of patience. The truth had finally been confronted, but the road ahead was long and fraught with challenges. Clara stepped out into the bustling streets of Paris, the morning sun shining down on her. She felt small against the backdrop of the city, but there was a flicker of determination within her. This was just the beginning of her journey toward redemption, and she was ready to face whatever lay ahead.